Parliament resumes with a much anticipated showdown between leaders. Prime Minister Mark Carney rolls out his affordable housing plan, and the Liberals reshuffle with Freeland out of the cabinet. Again, from Montreal, I'm Eddie Tekalik.
And I'm Gary MacDonald. Honest, unfiltered, Canadian, the conversation we should be having. This is Night Talk Canada, episode 51. Join the conversation tonight. Post your thoughts in the comments. Now let's get started.
So we're in a housing crisis, and it's going to take all hands on deck to get us out of it. Our private sector, our provinces and territories, municipalities, nonprofits, and Indigenous partners, all working together to speed up and scale up home building to build the affordable housing that all Canadians deserve. And so today, Minister of Housing and I are proud to launch Build Canada Homes, a new federal entity that will supercharge housing construction across Canada. Build Canada Homes will do several things. It will help fight homelessness by building transitional and supportive housing in close partnership with provinces, territories, municipalities, and Indigenous communities. Secondly, it will expand deeply affordable and community housing for low-income households. Third, Build Canada Homes will partner with private sector developers to build affordable homes for the Canadian middle class. And finally, Build Canada Homes, in doing all of that, will catalyze the creation of an entirely new Canadian housing industry that uses modern methods of construction to boost productivity sustainably and at scale. So how we do that? Well, Build Canada Homes will offer flexible financial incentives. It'll approve large portfolio projects and quickly leverage public lands for housing so projects are de-risked, approvals are greenlit, and builders can do what they do best, which is to build. By combining development, financing, and innovation, Build Canada Homes will make large housing projects financially viable. We'll also attract enormous private capital into affordable home building. And it will enable private manufacturers and modular home builders to invest in new factories, expand capacity rapidly, and to continue to innovate. This, along with a series of other new measures, will help double the pace of housing construction in this country over the next decade.
And with that announcement, Prime Minister Mark Carney checks a box for one of his election promises. So let's look at some of the details. Let's get into it and do a deep dive. Okay, so new federal agency with $13 billion. $13 billion in startup funding. Public lands, federal public lands will be used, and modular bills to produce savings and speed things up. The first phase includes 4,000 modular homes in 6 cities, scaling to 45,000 units nationwide. A focus on vulnerable Canadians with emphasis on nonprofit, supportive, and transitional housing, and ambition versus reality. Well, okay, this is where it comes in as far as the discussion is concerned. Success depends on funding, labor supply, and provincial municipal cooperation. And Eddie, it seems that at least in theory, in the way they're talking, most provinces and municipalities are on board as far as getting housing started in their jurisdictions.
Yeah.
I just question as to how far they're willing to go and what they may do with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, first of all, I mean, Mr. Carney and his government has been quite busy, I'd have to admit, over the last 10 to 14 days, coming up with all sorts of plans to get our country not just moving forward, but jumping forward. And you know what? Essentially catching up to the last 10 years of pretty much not a whole hell of a lot progressing our country as a competitive force in the world. And you know what? This whole talk about housing has been something that's been on the table. It's been on election platforms for at least 20 years, with very, very, very little actually coming to fruition. In my recent memory, this is the first time I've actually uh, seen it as part of the election campaign by both parties, by all three parties, as a matter of fact, the Liberals, Conservatives, and the NDP. Carney was very heavy on this during his debate. He continuously talked about it during his campaign. And you know what? And it's a check mark in his box. It's things to do. He's definitely checked this one off in bold. He came across very strongly. Came across very confidently. And you know what? I think what he's doing is also leveraging off the numerous meetings he had with the provincial leaders and territorial leaders about what is up there in terms of your agendas in your own provinces. I would be very surprised if housing did not come up. And you know what? In a provincial jurisdiction, if the premier did not bring up housing as an issue, he has no business being a premier because we've got a big problem right across this country. So I would be very surprised if anyone within the provincial premier hold would contest what Prime Minister Carney is not proposing here. It's what he's doing. I'll be very surprised if anybody criticized that. And I would even go a step further. I'd be extremely annoyed and surprised if somebody in the opposition, doesn't matter which party, would critique and criticize the aggressiveness of deploying such a program when it's so desperately needed, and it's been desperately needed for decades now. So I think the premier is not. I know that the premier is on board. Definitely. I've been keeping a close ear to anything here in the province of Quebec in terms of non-support or support of this. And you know what, the cages and the peanut gallery has been relatively quiet, but I think we got to give it a few days because Premier Legault here in the province of Quebec has his own. He's got bigger fish to fry, so I don't think he's going to critique this. I think it's a positive all around, Gary.
I think the goal is positive. I'm still a little bit concerned as to achieving the goal, how we're going to achieve it. And a couple of things I should point out as well, Eddie, is there are some linked funds, $1.5 billion for rental protection fund,
Right.
and I don't know the details on that one yet, and $1 billion for supportive housing. And again, no real details on that either. And here's the thing. We've got 4,500 units or 4,000 units going up in 6 cities right away. You want to
Right.
get the shovels in the ground and probably get the foundations in before the ground starts to freeze up. But are they going to be able to? No one is talking about the labor shortage.
Hmm.
And do we have enough skilled laborers, trained or carpenters and so on, to handle this sudden surge of growth?
Right.
That is a huge question mark. And I know over the last couple of years, a lot of the carpentry unions have really stepped up their training. They have their own training institutions and everything across the country, and that's great. But are we turning out enough people,
To be able to
especially
do it. Yeah.
now, as quickly as we're going to need them as we're moving forward with this? 4,000 homes in 6 cities in a very short span of time. That's a lot. Now, the factory, one of the factories, and I believe it was the one he was standing in front of when he made the announcement on
Hmm.
Monday or Sunday, and that factory is putting out something like 2 to 3 homes a day, and they're talking about ramping up before this is all over to be able to push out, I think it was 38 homes a day.
Yeah.
That's a huge, huge difference. And that's a lot of homes going out that front door,
Yeah.
destined for new owners. My other major concern out of all of this is we're talking about affordable housing, but there's been no talk about making it easier for people to qualify for mortgages for this
Hmm.
affordable housing. There's been no discussion of that whatsoever. And it's great to have so called affordable housing available, but if the mortgage rules are so tight that you can't qualify, even though you may be paying almost twice as much in rent as what you'd be paying on your mortgage, or you've been unable to save enough money for a suitable or sizable down payment, or whatever the minimum down payment that the banks and other financial institutions are willing to accept, then you're not going to be able to get into one of these affordable houses. And then what happens?
Wasn't the plan, and correct me if I'm wrong, Gary, wasn't the plan for affordable housing both to enable people to afford homes to buy them, but as well as modular homes with minimal with income that's not to market value. So our families who cannot afford a home going to have access through a rental process to be able to rent some of these homes. I thought the plan was inclusive of that, or am I thinking about a different plan here?
I'm not sure. I haven't heard a whole lot of talk about the actual affordability,
I see.
how people are going to qualify and what the definition of affordability is.
Yeah.
Because that's the other side of it. How much are these homes going to cost once they put them on the market? You know, I, I'm all for getting this underway. I really think it's good for the economy if everybody who wants to buy a home, who wants to, or needs a home, if they can qualify. And does it
Right.
mean that part of this, where the government has to step in, maybe through CMHC, and get into the business of offering mortgages, or getting into the business of, like back in when was it, the 70s, when they guaranteed the mortgages through CMHC, and you
Hmm.
had really low interest rates at the time. But a lot of those people, when the program ran out, it was at a time when interest rates on mortgages were up around 20%. And I
Hmm.
remember living in a subdivision, and every day I drove out to work, there'd be another house that was lived in when I arrived home from work the day before, and on my way to work the next morning, empty, gone. They just disappeared into the middle of the night because they couldn't afford it. It just,
Right.
when your interest rate jumps from 5%, 6% up to 20%.
Yeah, double digit. You're done,
Yeah,
pretty much.
no kidding. Let's
Well,
grab a quick comment here too,
sure.
just so we don't get behind on them. Okay. Deborah says it all sounds wonderful, but who is going to vet the construction companies? Who is going to ensure they will not be charging $10 for a nail?
That last
And
statement is good.
yeah, it's so true, especially where you have governments involved, right? When you have a government project underway, it
Yeah.
seems that uh, it's free reign. And
Deborah,
that's
$10 a nail. It's $20 in Quebec. What are you talking about? Like, literally. That's
uh,
just
so there's still, to me, so many questions and not enough answers.
yeah.
I full praise to the Prime Minister for getting out front and getting the program on the table, but I think we're still lacking some detail, and we still have the whole issue of, do we have the qualified labor force available to get the job done as quickly
Yeah.
as the PM wants to get it done, and as quickly as the rest of us want to get it done as well.
Well, I think one way maybe to circumvent, the labor force, especially when you're looking at brick and mortar construction, from ground up, is the fact that they're actually going modular, and a lot of what these guys would have done is already prefabricated. So you're basically just stacking them up one on top of each other or next to each other. And I think I saw something last week or the week before that somewhere in Canada they actually put up something like 20 units in a matter of a week or something like that. Now, and what they had to finish off was connecting of the water pipes and make sure the electricity is run through all the apartments. But they'll be ready to go very soon. And I think that's where, by going modular, you circumvent a lot of the labor. In Deborah's comment, a lot of the nails are already in the modular units, so all you're basically doing is screwing the units together or clamping them together, and then the rest is up to the plumbers and electricians to finish everything else. So I'm hoping that the modular solution, Gary, would offset the lack of labor we have that we typically see in brick and mortar construction operations from ground up. So I guess time will tell, and we'll just have to wait and see. But I thought that was very impressive. Them putting up close to a dozen and a half buildings in absolutely no time, when something like that would take months and months and months to do. So you know what? Maybe he's taking an approach where, it's always been talk and plan and talk and plan. Maybe he's shooting first and ask questions later, and let's get this thing rolling. That's what I'm hoping for, at least. And with six project cities on the horizon, it's going to give the provincial jurisdiction, municipal jurisdictions exposure to this, and perhaps it'll give them some idea of implementing some of their own provincial programs in order to offset the housing crisis. And maybe at some point this can be extended into the into dealing with the homeless crisis that we've talked about from time to time. So I think just getting this thing rolling, Gary, is going to have a positive effect on other opportunities or other issues that we need to contend with, both within our provinces and cities. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens with this.
Well, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking that $1 billion for supportive housing may very well be the type of housing aimed at getting people off the streets and getting them into something that's decent and warm, and they have the amenities that they need. And
Right.
that's a major step forward. $1 billion, it's a lot of money, but when you look at our homeless situation across this country, is it going to be enough?
Hmm.
Time will tell as far as that is concerned. Using federal lands, I think that's a great idea to get in, because I think Ottawa, if they're getting a bit of pushback from a municipality, for example, on zoning or whatever, it's federal land. I think Ottawa can kind of use a little bit of muscle and just kind of roll over the municipality and the objections it may be putting up for whatever the reason. So and there's an abundance of federal land across the country just waiting. The other side of that federal lands, though, um, what sort of costs may be involved in environmental remediation before they can actually build?
Hmm.
These are questions that are, and just the more I think about this whole project, more of these questions just keep coming up. Do we have somebody in the public service in the Build Canada Homes office now? Are these the things that they're going to be dealing with as they start pushing these projects out the door?
Hmm.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
hopefully, so that we don't run into some kind of major delay or shag up where you've got uh, a dozen houses sitting partially finished and gathering dust because of environmental issues that have popped up, or again, legal challenges. You name it. There's just a host of things that can come along.
Right.
I want to see the program. Don't get me wrong. I want to see this program succeed. I really,
Right.
really do want to see it succeed. I just hope that we're moving fast, and as you say, he's pulling the trigger, and we'll deal with any of the casualties after the fact. But I hope that there are, they're going to learn very quickly lessons
Yeah.
and best practices to keep this thing moving and moving quickly and get more people into homes. And
Yeah.
again, comes the big question mark about the actual financing of a home if you want to buy one.
Well, if you really think about it too, I mean, this was a very strong statement by, I'm not going to say the Liberal Party of Canada, by Mark Carney. This was a very strong statement coming out from him. And Deborah saying $10 a nail. You know what? Um, he knows he's got to deliver big time on this. He's not going to deliver 100%. We all know that from a political sphere, they never deliver 100%. But he's got to make a dent with this particular program and get things moving. All right. This $10 nail could end up being 100 nails in the coffin of Mark Carney's career as a politician and leader of the Liberal Party and Prime Minister of Canada. If he doesn't deliver on this, it's one of his largest mandates, which will directly impact much needing Canadians in terms of being able to afford a home in this country. And I don't think he would come out and make a bold statement of commitment to deal with the housing crisis if he didn't really think he can accomplish it, because that would be absolute political suicide. So, hopefully he'll be able to put up some projects very quickly. Otherwise, look, that's what opposition leader Poilievre is there for. He's there to hold Carney's feet to the fire in delivering on the commitment he just made to the entire country. That's what your tax dollar and my tax dollar is paying Mr. Poilievre to do, and I really hope he does a good job of keeping Prime Minister Carney's feet to the fire. So, just in cycling back in summary, complete political suicide if he doesn't push this forward, because he made a big commitment to Canada.
Yeah, and the overall goals for the program:
Hmm.
build deeply affordable, supportive, and transitional housing. Plus, this is another area that will prove to be interesting. Plus, protect existing rentals.
Yes.
So that one, again, like as I say, it's going to be interesting to see how that is defined in the long run. How you're going to protect existing rentals.
Hmm.
Does that mean rent control? Does it mean enforcing regulations to make sure that the rental units are up to standard? Um, you know, I'm not sure exactly what that means yet, and I don't know if it's been fully defined.
Yeah. I would suspect, or I would expect, all of the above, to tell you the truth. I mean, you and I in the news, local news especially, we've seen and heard atrocities in terms of percentage rental increases, gentrification of neighborhoods. Uh, we've heard of units that are not up to standards and not up to code, and people are paying a fortune for a dump. So I would tend to agree with you, Gary. You were saying or this or that. I think it's got to be all of the above. Otherwise, what's the point of having a plan, right?
Yep, for sure, for sure. Well, hopefully, it's he's laid it out in some of the details. I'm sure are still to be determined. But let's see how fast we start getting shovels in the ground for those foundations and those units to start rolling out.
Right.
And you've got cities like Winnipeg, and I believe it was Calgary and a few others, and one here in just outside of Montreal. So we're ready to go, and he seems ready to go. And full marks to Carney if he can deliver on this, and it I'm hoping it is successful, not for Carney and his political career, like hopefully yes, but that's not. The real winners will be Canadians
Right.
who are having a tough time putting a roof over their heads. And it's just that simple. And, hopefully it's all going to come together. And with that, I think up next, Freeland leaves the cabinet, and we finally get, guess what? We're going to get a budget, and we've got the date. We'll get into that in a couple of minutes. If you're thinking about launching a web page or expanding your web presence or move from an American to Canadian provider, Web Hosting Canada, WHC, is offering a great limited time special. You can get the Web Pro hosting plan for just $2.99 a month for your first year. Now, this applies to new hosting plans only and includes a free domain for a year as well. For more information, click on the affiliate link in the description below. And by the way, I am a WHC customer and have been for 4.5 years, and I can't say enough good things about their service.
And Gary, just 3 days into the resumption of Parliament, a big change has taken place in the Liberal front benches. Transportation and Internal Trade Minister Chrystia Freeland has left cabinet and announced she will not be reoffering in the next election. The reason? She will become Canada's special envoy to the Ukraine. On top of that, we also finally have a date for the Carney government's first budget. First, let's dive into the Freeland departure.
Okay. A real shock yesterday when this all came about. Although I've noticed the last couple of times where she has been behind the Prime Minister when they're making the announcement, how they have all of the nodding heads behind them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I remarked to you one day that she just doesn't look like she's into it.
Like disconnected.
Yeah. And actually, there was a commentator last night after this all hit as well, who picked up on that very same thing, that she has not been really displaying any kind of a real passion for what she's doing, because before, when she was finance minister, when she was negotiating the first free trade deal with the U.S. president at the time in his first term, she was really just a firecracker. And over the summer in particular, after the election, she seemed rather subdued whenever you saw her around. And anyway, so what I heard yesterday doesn't surprise me, the fact that she was stepping away from cabinet. And here she is. She's been very passionate about the Ukraine. And, she has Ukrainian connections, very passionate about the war in the Ukraine. And she's going to become our envoy, special envoy to the Ukraine. And apparently the whole idea is she's going to start working in helping to build plans for rebuilding the Ukraine.
Rebuild, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, once the war comes to an end. So I think it's something that she can really sink her teeth into. I also heard somebody mention yesterday, and when I thought about it, I'm thinking that this may, there may be some truth to this as well. Carney may be now starting to very slowly move some of the former Trudeau ministers who are, in government now, reelected, may start moving them out to put more of his own mark on the cabinet. And yes, you have some very experienced people, and yes, they had no problems winning their ridings back in April, no problems at all. But even if, watching some of the others now, some of that fire seems to be gone. And I don't know if it's because of how poorly the party was doing in the final days of Trudeau's reign, and how poorly the country was doing in the final days. Well, over the last 10 years, really, but that's a whole other story. But I think you may see, I agree with the person who brought this up yesterday in one of the panels, that you may see now more and more some of these uh, former Trudeau ministers and supporters slowly going out the door to other assignments outside of Parliament.
Hmm.
Whether it's a special envoy or an ambassadorship or whatever. Bill Blair, for example, who was dropped from the cabinet after the federal election in April. Uh, there's talk about him being offered an ambassadorship and a couple of others. So there may be a move now, uh, a move that's not disruptive and doing it slowly, so you're not pulling all of the experience and pushing it out the door at once. And as he's getting to know the rest of his elected members and what their strengths are, uh, he's probably now already picking successors
Hmm.
for some of these other ministers, and very quietly, as I say, moving them out and putting his own mark on the cabinet and removing that shadow, that Trudeau shadow that continues to hang over the Liberal government. Even today, it's still there. It's like stink on a
And
mop.
constantly being reminded by the opposition of that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's where it's going. I think Freeland will do an excellent job in representing Canada and working very hard with the Ukrainian officials to put together some kind of a plan for rebuilding of that country. And God knows, like once this is over, the
Hmm.
rebuilding that's going to have to take place is just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Mind-boggling what's going to have to be done. And then you look at the Mid East, and it's going to be 10 times that. Just mind-boggling. Anyway,
Yeah.
so I think Carney is moving in the right direction to very, very quietly, discreetly start really taking the rest of the Trudeau
Hmm.
era that's hanging over his head and moving that out to really putting his own stamp on the government. And the government for, well, it's a minority government technically, so it could be for a month, it could be for 2 months, 6 months, or it could be for the full 4 years. Who knows?
Yeah. Well,
So
I mean, from my perspective, I was trying to, kind of understand Freeland's position on this. It could very well be, and we've heard very often the two of them speak of each other's friendship. Okay. And as you mentioned, a lot of Trudeau's front benchers won their ridings quite handily in the last election, which was great for Carney's government in getting some of these senior officials on the front bench and even supporting the backbench, winning their ridings quite handily. And I would not be surprised if there was already discussion before the election was had, before they had won the election, between Prime Minister Carney and Chrystia Freeland about what her role will be moving forward, or what her preference for a role would be moving forward. And it could very well be that this was already decided before the election outcome, and they're just now moving forward and executing it after having 6 or 7 months of discussions of how do we transition this to other senior portfolios, and allow her perhaps to pursue one of her passions. As you has mentioned, she is of Ukrainian descent. She's very close to what's going on in Europe, in the Ukraine. She was a renowned reporter out in Europe during the initial campaigns of Russia in the Crimea area, and she was very heavily involved. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Gary, she was actually under Putin's skin, and she was banned from going to Russia. So you know what? That's not necessarily a bad thing to have in terms of being able to have some significant influence to draw the ire of the leader of Russia. And you know what? Not a bad thing that she drew the ire of Mr. Orange Cone down south, where he didn't like her either. So obviously she's not afraid of pushing the issues about challenging the issues and holding people accountable enough to piss them off and draw the ire of these leaders. So you know what? I really think that, in my opinion, this was already something that was discussed beforehand. I don't think it's a surprise to Prime Minister Carney. He knew about this some time ago, and I think they're just executing a plan and allowing her to pursue her passion while she can still represent her country, which obviously, she has declared very, very often how much she loves this country and wants to see the country grow and continue doing good for the country. So, good on her for doing it professionally. Look, you know what? Yeah, she dropped a bomb on Trudeau, months ago. She basically
She
ended
was
his
the only
political
one who had the real drive to
the
do it.
chutzpah to do it. Yes,
Yeah.
and you know what? She essentially ended his political career, and that's because she holds true to her values. She focuses on her values, and she won't let her values be trampled on. So that is a good quality to have for the venture, or for the project and program and venture she's undertaking now in planning to rebuild the Ukraine. Perfect qualifications to have. So, you know what? I wish her the best of luck. I know she got bashed a lot under the Trudeau government. She held her own. She toed the party line. She won the election. She did what she needed to do with with the two portfolio she has, and I think she's taking a step forward in her career and her profile, not just as a leader within Canada, but also she's going to be exposed to the rest of the world, and the rest of the world is going to be exposed to her. So, congratulations to her.
Now, she very quickly said yesterday that she would not be reoffering in the next election.
Hmm.
Um, I think that you're going to see her resigning as an MP sometime in the next 2 weeks,
Yeah.
two, maybe three at the outside. That's it. And she has to, in order to focus on this new position,
Hmm.
and really get into it. Um, I would say no more than 3 weeks, but I would expect that we'll probably hear something within 2 weeks that she's resigning, which then means that Carney's going to have to call a by-election. But it is a safe, relatively safe Liberal seat that she holds at the moment. So,
Hmm.
and with everything that Carney's rolling out, that shouldn't be a real challenge to get another Liberal elected there. And I'm sure Carney has a candidate in mind already, or a couple of people that he'll be, you know, no doubt courting to see if they're interested in jumping into the ring. But whether he holds off and drags the by-election out to the very last legal moment remains to be seen. I would suggest that probably he could let it go for a couple of months, but I wouldn't let it go any longer because he still does not have a majority. So at any time, any one of a number of the parties on the other side of the house can gang up and muster the numbers. Just even if all it takes is just one,
Yeah.
and bang, we're into a federal election again. Although I don't think the Conservatives really want that at the moment. The NDP for sure doesn't want it at the moment. And the Bloc, well, the Bloc, I doubt very much they won an election at this point either, after
Yeah.
coming through the last federal one. So it's it's now becoming really a very tight game of chess, I think. And Carney, I think, is probably a master chess player. So it's going to be interesting to watch, and some of the new moves he's bringing that the old style political types may not be able to quite handle, at least initially. But I think he's going to bring some new twists to the party. So anyway, congratulations to Freeland. I know already that there are some who are saying that she's doing the same thing that she did back in December. She didn't want to deliver the financial statement with the deficit that went over what was promised. It was what they promised, $40 billion deficit. It was 60
Yeah,
some
thereabouts.
billion. Yeah. So and now they're saying she doesn't want to be part of the bad news we're going to get in the fall budget, Carney's first budget. And you know what? Just so you know, in the midst of question period yesterday, Finance Minister Francois Philippe Champagne announced he would be delivering the Carney government's first budget on November 4th.
Yep.
And that's going to be a really tough document to sell. There are rumors already floating that the deficit could be in the 80 to $100 billion range. Now, and Carney has been saying all along that we're going to cut where we can, and we're going to spend a lot, but we're spending money that we're investing, and there will be a return on investment. Some of that return on investment is going to be long term, and he could even just sell it right now as most of this deficit is resulting from the new commitment we've made to NATO for bringing our military up to snuff and meeting our commitments to NATO, both in spending and in the equipment and the quality of the equipment that we can provide if called upon by NATO. Because right now, we all know, or we should know, that first of all, our armed forces are understaffed. Our armed forces, with the equipment they have right now, it's pretty much
Antiquated.
Band-Aids. Yeah, antiquated, and band-aids here and there to try and fix things. They're having a tough time sourcing spare parts for old equipment that they have over in Latvia on a mission for NATO. How bad is that?
And that's as frontline as you can get out in Europe.
Exactly. So, and I've always had so much respect for members of the Canadian Armed Forces for doing what they do with what they have and doing it well. Like, no one can fault them at any time. They may be, driving the clunker out of the bunch, but it's still running somehow on a hope and a prayer for the most part, and they get the job done. So I don't think that that's a tough sell. And finally, he announced a few weeks ago that the military would be getting raises. It's been a long time since they received raises. So full marks, because we're calling on our military more and more for help at home, whether it's natural disasters like flooding and tornadoes and wildfires in particular.
And our fires, of course.
Yeah. A lot of our armed forces have been tied up with fighting wildfires. So why? And not only the Trudeau government takes it on the head for this, the previous conservative governments,
Mr. Harper, he
yep,
was,
did
yeah,
did a fair amount of cutting to the military or ignoring the military, and so it goes on both sides of the house on this one.
right.
You can't point a finger at one or the other; they all share in the blame. So anyway, we're moving forward. Budget day is going to be must see TV.
Yeah.
I don't totally understand accounting and numbers, but you throw the big number at me, I get it. And
Hmm.
I'm going to be watching this one and watching how it's justified. And
And that's the key. If they can justify what they're doing with the money and justify it well, where the Canadian public and even the pundits, the opposition pundits, can clearly see where this money is being uh, earmarked for, I think generally it can be an accepted budget. At least, he's got to plan a budget for being in existence for another 3.5 years before the next election. So that's the way it should be done. Um, and you know what? If the budget actually speaks around everything he's promised over the at least the last 10 days, above and beyond some of the other things he's spoken of, and one of them being the very heavy on the military. And look, sometimes I'll call it spending because it's a necessary evil. Not in the Canadian military's case. It's not a necessary evil. This is necessary in terms of making sure our borders are secured and our sovereignty is protected, and at the same time, keep our commitments to our allies in NATO. Like you said, this has long been neglected, and to call it a necessary evil is absolutely wrong. It's an absolute necessity to our survival, and it's an absolute necessity to our integrity around the world. So, you know what? I think if they can, correctly justify and connect a large dollar figure to a specific project and what the outcome of it's going to be, I think generally Canadians would be, on number one, appreciative of that type of transparency, and number two, I would suspect they would accept it. Look, you're always going to get the pundits that are going to complain about the government that they did not vote for, regardless if what they're doing is good for them. Right? We're always going to hear that. The peanut gallery is going to stand up and whatnot. But look, at the end of the day, would I be the first to criticize Carney? If he's taking 5 steps forward and 1 step back, you know what? That's okay with me. If it's the reverse, like we've had the last 10 years, where you take 1 step forward and 4 backwards, well, you know what? Both of you and I had a problem with that. So I don't typically watch budgets, Gary, but this particular one, I have a very keen interest in being glued to the to media and seeing exactly what is going to be presented here. It's very important. It's a big one. Okay, I'm not saying big in terms of money, but it's extremely big in terms of correcting Canada's trajectory towards a positive direction, and getting us moving quickly. So I'm looking forward to it. It should be an interesting one.
we have one comment that came in a while ago, and I'm just holding off on it right now. Well, you know what? Might as well put it up. I thought it would go with the last segment, but we've got another
Mhm.
comment as well. So let's bring that up. Deborah says Pierre Poilievre's agenda, in my opinion, is to bring his party into power. He has never shown that Canadian people are a priority.
Hmm.
Yeah, no question. He wants to be sitting in the prime minister's chair, no doubt about that, and he wants the reins of government. Um, and I don't know if he's learned any lessons after his defeat in April. and then coming back with, in a safe seat with an easy win, which, we'll watch some of his first day back in the House, in the first time that Carney and Poilievre faced off in question period, which was yesterday. Let's go one more comment here. And Greg says, I think what is missing, regretfully for the public, is how spending under the guise of investment needs to be further explained, how spending equals investment, and what is the real outcome measure with real change and better outcomes. In other words, like, you're looking for some solid key performance indicators as far as where the return on investment is going to come from the money that's being spent. And I don't disagree with that either, Greg. We really need to turn our government into a more business-like manner. They're spending our money, and
True.
they're spending more than what we're generating as far as our money is concerned, meaning that generations going forward will be saddled with this debt that they're going to have to pay down at some point. And is there really any need for some of the debt that has been run up, especially in the last 10 years, for nothing more than just photo ops?
Yeah.
With a whole bunch of nodding heads. And when are they going to get over having all of these people lined up behind them for these announcements? It's driving me freaking crazy.
Yeah.
It's, and when you watch those workers, they're there only because they were told you're lining up.
Mm-hmm.
They have, for the most part, after about the first 2 to 3 minutes, as you get into more of the political talk, and then you get into the Q&A, the scrum with the media, they have about as much interest in that as you and I have in, I don't know, mowing the lawn tomorrow. I don't have any interest in that. Do you?
Well, I think I told you a story about my son one time attending a Montreal Alouettes game, and this big gorilla came up to him and says, "Stand over here, young man. You're taking a picture with the Prime Minister, Harper, at that time." And guess what? He had to stand up against the wall until the Prime Minister was ready, and went over, took a big smiling picture with him, and thank you very much for your time. So these photo ops are getting to a point of being ridiculous. And you know what? I saw Prime Minister Carney with his entourage in behind, and I kind of shook my head as well, just like you. Like, why do you have to do that? Half of them are staring off into space. Half of them are nodding because that's what they were told to do, and half of them look like they didn't even want to be there. So it just doesn't. To me, it just doesn't look good for the image of the Prime Minister. I think he can do better there.
Yeah, just set the podium up, and the advanced people need to really start getting a little sharper. You don't set up a podium in the middle of a factory where you can't shut all of the machinery down.
Right.
And people are shouting, trying to be heard, and it's just a horror show. A dog's breakfast. But anyway, coming up, what's up? Okay, the much anticipated, are you ready? The much anticipated parliamentary showdown. Eddie and I appreciate the support we have and continue to receive since launching Night Talk Canada a year ago. That support comes through your likes, your shares, your subscriptions, and your comments. Now, if you want a different way of offering your support, you can buy us a coffee. Simply scan the QR code, which again, I forgot to put up tonight, but you can click the link in the description below. Eddie and I will enjoy our next coffee thanks to you. Well, Monday afternoon was really must-see TV for political junkies.
Gary, and it was the first question period where Prime Minister Carney faced off against the so-called parliamentary attack dog, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre.
Okay, let's have a look at some of what took place on Monday in the great matchup.
Oral question.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
My mother taught me never to be late, so please forgive me for my late arrival to the session. I had some meetings with extremely important people in East Central Alberta, Mr. Speaker, after which I was honored to be elected by the great people of Battle River Crowfoot. I served in this House. I thank the great Damien Kirk who made it possible, and I thank the Prime Minister for calling a prompt by-election. I wonder if one day he might regret that decision, but in a spirit of good faith, I wonder if he agrees that our goal should be a Canada where hard work is rewarded, where food and homes are affordable, where streets are safe, where borders are solid, and where we're all united under a proud flag.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure I speak for all parliamentarians in welcoming the member for Battle River Crowfoot back to the House of Commons. He may notice a few things have changed since he was here last. The largest women's caucus in Canadian history. And a spirit of collaboration that was shown in the opening session, including in the passage of the Build Canada Act and the projet de loi du Bloc québécois en ce qui concerne.
And the Bloc's bill in terms of protecting supply management. I agree entirely with the sentiment and objectives of the Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister mentioned how much had changed, and it's true. I look around this place, and when I left, there was a Liberal Prime Minister who was making excuses about breaking promises, running massive deficits, costs, crime, chaos were all out of control. And whereas today, we have a Liberal Prime Minister breaking promises, making excuses, running massive deficits with costs, crime, and chaos out of control. Mr. Speaker, when will the Prime Minister match the grand promises with the real change Canadians need?
Mr. Speaker, I understand the Minister, or the Minister, promotion. Come on over. I understand the Leader of the Opposition was busy. He missed the largest tax cut for 22 million Canadians. He missed the cut on the GST for new homes. He missed eliminating all federal barriers to trade. He missed. I hope I'll have another opportunity to finish a very long list of what the Leader of Opposition.
In the spirit of nonpartisanship, we are simply going to hold this Prime Minister to his own promises. He promised that he would spend less. He's already spending 8% more. He promised the budget would be in October. Now he says it will be in November, more than halfway through the fiscal year. He promised that his government would have a smaller deficit than Justin Trudeau. Instead, now we hear that it might even be double. So a trivia question. Can the Prime Minister tell us, has there ever been a Prime Minister who has successfully doubled the deficit without even introducing a budget?
Mr. Speaker, this government is undertaking the biggest investment in protecting Canadians in the Canadian military. Doubling our investment in the Canadian military from last year when this member last sat in the House by the end of this decade. This government, there's more.
There's more. He was having a bit of a hard time with the 35-second response.
Yeah.
So, but, it was not, and I heard some people say, oh, yeah, Poilievre'S back and fighting for him and everything. it wasn't
No.
the showdown I thought it was going to be. It was Polyev was restrained. I'll give him that. He
Yeah.
was much more adult-like, and not one phrase over and
Parliamentarian.
over.
He acted
Yeah,
like a parliamentarian.
yeah.
Not that
And
circus that you and I got used to the last mandate, right?
well, exactly, and that's what I was going to say next, Eddie, is the fact that all through, yes, there was clapping and a few catcalls back and forth, but nothing like it was in the for the last 2 years
Hmm.
of Trudeau's reign. It was just unbelievable, and Poilievre himself was just as guilty as anyone else in that house at the time for the way that he was conducting himself. This time around, he did look more, much more the role of a parliamentarian. Um, and yes, he went after the government as the leader of the opposition. He has to do, and he's on them about the deficit and at that point the lack of a budget. It was after that particular point in
Hmm.
the day's proceedings that Champagne stood up and announced that it would be the budget would be tabled on November 4th. So I have to give Poilievre marks for coming back and looking like he has learned a lesson. We'll see if it carries through and how long it takes if he does start to fall back into his old ways. I can't see it. I think he realizes he's dealing with a different animal with
Yeah.
Carney across the aisle.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, and also Poiliev had mentioned as well that, he will be supportive of the prime minister and the government in policies that will make Canada better. When was the last time you heard him say that? I can't
yeah,
recall him saying that ever. So I think you're right, Gary. He realizes who's across the floor from him, that he's not dealing with anybody that's out of his element. He understands what's going on in the world. He understands what's going on just south of us, and the importance of understanding clearly what's going on. He clearly sees that there's somebody across the floor that understands the dynamics of a very difficult world, and that he also understands that the person he's dealing with is an economist. I mean, he knows the ins and outs of dollars and cents and how the world works. So you know what, he has to be, and from a political perspective, he has to be very careful. He has to be very tactful in terms of how he works with the government to ensure that he's doing his job in advancing Canada's interest, even though he's the leader of the opposition. And by the same token, he has to pick good opportunities to critique Carney's government to get a point across, and it's not just about winning the next election. The next 3 years prior to next election call is about rebuilding the country, and it behooves him and his constituents to see that he's doing exactly that as the opposition leader in rebuilding the country. You know what? When an election gets called, like you said a couple of shows ago, all hats are off, all bets are off. Let's go, may the best man win, and do what you need to do. But right now, the business of Parliament and every member in there is getting this country moving forward quickly. And you know what? I was really impressed with how Mr. Poilievre conducted himself. I was expecting a shit show, and obviously he did learn a lesson. And you're right, he knows that he's dealing with a different animal across the floor. And you know what? I think this is great for Canada.
oh, absolutely, and hopefully it continues in that manner. Although I can see that Carney would probably be very quick to either launch across the floor big time or have a meeting with Poilievre and just say, look, you know what? This has to stop. We're getting nowhere with, But right now, Poilievre, if he continues along this road, full marks. And I really hope it does, because I think we do need a very firm and effective opposition. And when you have, back in 6 months ago, when you had the Bloc mounting a more effective opposition in the House with its limited number of members, and it's, it didn't seem like it was a Quebec nationalist party. It was more of a party, an opposition party for all of Canada.
Yeah.
If you recall, at times the way that they held Trudeau's feet, to the fire, and in the Conservatives, Poilievre was sticking to his talking points with his, catchy phrases, the same phrases over and over and over again. Well, Carney has very quickly removed a couple of those launch pads, so they're out the window. And Poilievre sounded much more parliamentarian, and I really hope it continues. And a couple of comments here as well to catch up on. So let's go over to the comment board. And first of all, Elizabeth said she apologized for joining late. She was watching some things that were happening south of the border. She said, in response to the buy me a coffee, I'll just buy you a drink of your choice.
Well, thank you, Lisa.
Yeah. And she said she's been gone for 25 years and doesn't follow politics in Montreal. What are the debates about? Well, and she wants to know, is Carney not a good guy? Well, the debate, there wasn't a lot of debating really in the yesterday, and probably a little bit more today, because it was the first day back, the resumption of Parliament. And that was Poilievre's first session back since being elected back in August, and the first time that he faced off against the Prime Minister in question period. And as you heard, he extended an olive branch of sorts to the Prime Minister and essentially said, which he has in some of his scrums as well, said that we're willing to work with the government to get programs for the betterment of Canadians. But we're also going to call the government on what they're doing when we think it's not in the best interest of the country.
Right.
That is the very basic way of an opposition. Hopefully, again, that he sticks to it. Carney is a well-educated individual, very, very bright as far as business and finances are concerned. After all, he was the governor of the Bank of Canada and then the governor of the Bank of England.
Correct.
For a number of years. He moves in the very, very high elements of the world financial trade and world finances in general. So he does know the right people to call at the right time if he needs to. He has a solid background in that manner. And that's why I think most Canadians to this point have been willing to give him a pass, despite the fact that he has announced, like, most of his announcements are in the 500 million plus range, and a lot of them now are hitting the $1 billion mark with relative ease whenever he starts to speak. But we're willing to give him the pass at this stage because he is talking about investment and getting a return on investment, and is cautioning that, yes, some of this return on investment will be a long time in coming. Fair ball. So he brought that party back from virtual. I mean, they were done.
Yeah, oblivion.
Yeah,
They were.
totally done. They might have been able to scrape together maybe a half dozen seats under Trudeau, if that. And Trudeau probably would have lost his own seat as well. But he brought them back. The Conservatives had a 20 to 25 point lead over the Liberals. They finally gave Trudeau the heave ho. Trudeau said goodbye and left. Carney comes in and closed that gap and brought it out so that the Liberals were on top and 4 seats shy of a majority.
Hmm.
4 seats shy after being down 25 points in the polls inside of about 3 to 4 months.
Yeah.
Turned them around. So definitely the guy knows what he's doing, and definitely the country was ready for a change in leadership. They weren't sold on the Conservatives, and there are a number of reasons why they weren't sold on the Conservatives. And Carney came along. So is he a good guy? Well, seems to be okay, seems to be doing a good job. He seems to be working hard. He's traveling and hitting the right financial capitals around the world.
And he comes
And
across as
very,
genuine.
yep, and very quietly putting together a number of new trade deals and new trade opportunities elsewhere in the world to pull our dependence away. And we had a huge dependence on trade with the U.S.
Right.
We're getting away from that because, unfortunately, the U.S. is unreliable and can't be trusted. It's just that simple. And I see where the U.S. ambassador to Canada was saying the other day at a conference that the U.S. was hoping for a much larger trade deal over and above the Kuzma deal that's going open for renegotiation next year. Hoping for a much broader deal with defense and everything else. And I sitting there reading that last night, thinking,
Let's all be friends.
yeah. I'm not going to say any more about him.
Yeah. Yeah.
He annoys me to no end. That's enough. So anyway, we'll let it go at that. So. And one more comment. Here's a question from Elizabeth. Okay, will he stop immigrants from invading our country? When you say our country, are you referring to the U.S. or are you referring to Canada?
I think she's referring to Canada.
Yeah. There is a major shift in a reduction in the number of people coming into the country over the next couple of years. Yeah, Canada.
And they've made it tougher already. They've made it tougher already.
Yeah, everything from international students on through. And the program was out of control. There's no doubt, and a lot of people are blaming the housing crisis partly on the fact that we had so many people coming in. The demand was high and the supply was low, and we needed to balance that out. So it hasn't been an invasion of the country. It's just been poorly managed.
Yeah.
With the wrong numbers at the wrong time. So I think that that's under control now, or coming under control, almost to the point where there are some in the business community who are suggesting, even with the reduction in temporary foreign workers,
it's affecting them.
hurt them.
It's affecting our businesses. Yeah.
So anyhow. All right. It's been a busy night, Eddie, from the launch of what the PM calls, what does he call it? He calls it the most ambitious house building program since the end of the Second World War. And it is, no question. To changes already in the Liberal front bench, to the much anticipated face-off between Poilievre and Carney, which is okay.
Yep. And if you like tonight's stream, drop a comment below, ladies and gentlemen. Share the replays, shorts, reels, and TikToks. Hit like and subscribe. I'm Eddie Tkalik. Good night.
And I'm Gary MacDonald. Honest, unfiltered Canadian, the conversation we should be having. Night Talk Canada returns in 7 days, and look for us on all social media: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Reels, Shorts, YouTube. We're there everywhere. Be looking for us. Good night.